Okay, Claudia. Hey, we are
Hello.
live now.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome, Claudia Tridapalli,
Thank
currently in
you.
Barcelona,
Actually, close to Barcelona. I'm actually in Tarragona.
in Tarragona. Okay,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Just making some time to chat because really excited to dig into some of your experiences. I mean, you're working at Geneva Business School
Yes,
as
exactly.
an educator. You seem to be teaching quite a lot of courses. It seems, you're covering a,
Yes,
a wide range of area, but your background is not, it's not strictly in education, isn't it? It's in sustainability, in engineering, sustainable design, consulting.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
so you've done what a lot of educators in especially business schools, I think, do. You kind of come in cold to
yes,
teaching.
yeah.
But one of the reasons I really wanted to chat to you today was because of your kind of your experimentation. You're
Hmm.
you trying things in the classroom. What works, what doesn't? How do I
Hmm.
improve the learning experience for the learners in my care? And it was just to kind of find out how all that's been going for you, because I think a lot of people might be able to relate to that. So
Yeah,
can I start by asking you just
yeah.
what drew you to education? Because you've kind of that you've gone a different route, and that's where you've
Hmm.
come to. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, most of my career well, pretty much all of my career was inside corporations, large
Mhm.
corporations. And I was actually reflecting yesterday, well, to get prepared to our conversation. I went back to remember, my career in education, my beliefs, and all of that. And I thought it was interesting because looking back, I graduated from college. I'm a chemical engineer. I graduated back in 2004. And my plan at that moment was to actually go for master's degree, then a doctorate degree, and teach. That was my plan. And then to graduate, we needed to go through internship, 6 months of internship. And I was offered a job in the industry. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I need to now review my plans if I'm actually going to take this job. But I thought it was very interesting because my reflection at the time was, I'll be a much better professor if I get practical experience and real experiences. I mean, I had great professors during my time at the university. Most of them were more academic, great professors, but more into the academic side. And when I started to work in the industry, I didn't feel prepared for that. I didn't feel prepared, no, for the some things that today maybe sound a little basic of how to lead a meeting,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
how to talk to people in a different way, like corporation language and all of that. Basic things that I didn't feel prepared for it because my university was more into the academic side. And so I thought, well, let me get practical experiences. And then in the future, I'm sure I'm going to be a much better professor, which was something that I wanted to do from the beginning. But life happens. I liked the job. And when I saw I was already 10 years there, kind of,
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
yes. So many opportunities. It was fun. It was a challenge. I learned a lot for sure. I actually had experience teaching in 2009, if I'm not wrong.
Mhm.
During 6 months, I taught physical chemistry, was it? It was such a fun experience for me that I told myself, okay, do something about it. And
Right.
I stayed just 6 months, stopped to get my master's degree and start to get prepared for this, let's say. But it still took 10 years after that for me
Well,
to start working at Geneva
but
Business School. Mm.
it's great because it's not a linear path. I mean, it's nice
Yeah.
for the learners in your environment to know that, for me personally, my opinion is that the non-standard, non-linear approach to life is going to be the standard. People don't stay in jobs for the same companies for 30 years like they used to, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's good to see that from learners' perspectives, that you can start here and then go here and end up here, and it's all valid and it's all
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about that
Mm-hmm.
6 months that you were in your kind of first foray in teaching? Because quite an interesting time, isn't it? Like, I mean, when you're suddenly in front of the class, and of course, you know your subject inside out, but knowing it and being able to communicate it are like a world apart, aren't they? And particularly something that in the sciences has always been an issue. You know, the communication of science. Lots of people with amazing ideas, but you know, people can't understand them. They're not accessible. So when you were standing there, I mean, were you in the kind of lecture format, or were you in tutorials or labs? I mean, what was the context?
It was a lecture. It was pretty much lecture. Right. Let's say that the way I learned, it was lecture, right? It was the traditional way of learning during my whole life. And I was always a nerd type of person. I always liked to study. I was the kid that was on vacation waiting for classes to go back. That was me, and it worked for me. So that my first experience teaching was that. It was lecture. And what I saw at that moment was how it did not work for everyone. That was my first perception. I had students who really liked my classes. They would tell me, right, "Hi, I really like your classes. I love the way you teach. I understand everything you say." But there were some other students that were kind of complaining. And so it was my first experience thinking and realizing that, this is much harder than I thought. It's not as easy, I think, as a lot of people think, that you just go there and get the content out. Because I think if you, at least for me, I am really genuinely interested in having them learning. I really do. And so
let's talk about that, because I'd be really keen to know. I'm just imagining you there in front of the lecture, and I've been there myself. I remember very vividly the first time I gave a lecture, and you've got, of course, your own experiences of education, and you were the type of learner that flourished in that environment. You quite liked, the curiosity, taking notes, revising, thinking about it, digging into other avenues of research, and hungry for that knowledge. And so the format that it was delivered didn't necessarily bother you as much, but we have to sort of contextualize it, maybe thinking about when with the arrival of the kind of the online world, and when we're thinking about exactly what you said, that some people think that you just stand there and sort of transfer the knowledge. It's in my head, let me just give it to you. And even doing stuff like just reading out a PowerPoint to people, or reading out the same notes that you've had for 15 years. You've maybe revised them every now and again, which of course to learners these days, if they simply want to acquire knowledge through passive transfer, they can go onto Google and do their own research, and they can, So how did you start to make it more engaging? You were obviously determined to do something a bit differently, and like, okay, let's improve the experience. So even just taking something very traditional and teacher-centered like the lecture format, was there any way you approached it to try and like at least make it more engaging for people on the other side?
Well, that started to happen when I joined Geneva Business School in 2019, right?
So that came later. Yeah.
Later, because at that time, during those 6 months, I didn't even know, I think there was a possibility of that, to be honest. I really didn't know. And I actually, when I joined Geneva Business School, they really do have the direction for us to make it practical, to make as real as you can. And so it was the first time that I started to think about that, actually. Okay, so how can I do this? So for me, it was a really big mindset change, for sure. Again, I didn't know. I think I was surprised in how things were in education when I started to do this, but not in a bad way. I was surprised that it was evolving, and I have fun with it. Like preparing classes that are different are more fun for me as well. It's hard. It's not easy. I don't get it right. every time. I try out a lot of things. And it's funny, you probably experienced this, but you can see on their faces, right? When you're trying out something, not really working that well. You can see in their faces, right? And then you try to adapt or make it a little bit different. Trying out, it's important. I mean, sometimes you get it right. A lot of times you get it right. Sometimes you get it wrong. It does happen. But I was surprised in a very good way. And what I used as inspiration when I was hired, and they told me, make it real, make it practical, use case studies, or bring the real corporation life to class. I took it as a problem, like problem solving type of, I teach problem solving actually, and I use problem solving techniques a lot to prepare my classes, because I see it as a problem. The problem is I have a lot of different students. I don't know who they are yet. I know they learn in different ways, but most of them, when we are having fun, we learn better. So I use it, all the factors, I used all the information that I have as a problem solving, and see what are different ways that I can do that. So I keep constantly asking myself, how can I do this more fun? How can I do this closer to real life? And as you start to thinking about it, as you create that problem in your mind, with time, ideas will come. The ideas will come when you least expect. You are walking around and then it comes, oh, I can try that. And I've been using a lot of that to prepare my classes without being too much in a rush. I mean, I still have lectures. I do lectures. There are some topics that I still do not know how to teach in a different way. It means that I'm not there yet. It doesn't mean I gave up and say, this is only lecture. I see for myself as a process. And every semester I'm trying a different way to teach something, let's say. Make sense?
I mean, I think that's what some people might not understand from the outside, especially people who have had experiences of higher education from years back. They maybe haven't seen how much it has and is evolving. And I have to say, it's largely thanks to educators like yourself, because it's not common for institutions to actually offer more formal training. It is happening. I've worked on a number of programs, teacher training with university teachers myself, and they are out there, but only in specific countries are very good, and some, especially in private systems, it's very much up to the institution. So we're very dependent on people like yourselves actually seeing it as a creative opportunity. And I don't know if you feel this way, but when you see it like that, there's a tremendous freedom and a tremendous creativity in teaching that, it doesn't exist in every job, in every industry, in every sector. To what extent do you kind of, what is your support network for this in terms of, where are you getting the ideas and inspiration on what to try out? Who are you sharing the highs and lows with? And to what extent are you involving the learners in this journey as well? Are you opening up and saying, hey, we're going to try something new today. I don't know if it's going to work, or, is that difficult with the kind of teacher persona? So what is your experience there?
That's an interesting question. I do get inspiration a lot. I think we are in a different situation now, maybe because of pandemic and all of that, and direct contact with other faculty members, for example, it's more limited than it used to be. I love, and I heard from a lot of other faculty members, when we get together, we get a lot of ideas just by talking to each other and sharing, but you get to know what everyone else is trying, what it's working, what it's not. It doesn't need to necessarily be official meetings, but just hallway conversations, unofficial, informal conversations type of thing. So I think the conversation with other faculty members and other professors, it's something that for sure inspired me a lot. And that because of the pandemic, I felt it's less than it used to be. I mean, for everyone, I think everyone understands this. And so I end up focusing online content, right? There's a lot of things online. You can find a lot of things. I sometimes think for myself that I should be sharing more. I am not, I think, the best on that. It's something that for sure I need to improve, of, telling more my story in a way, like we are doing this now, but sharing more what I tried, didn't work, what worked, because a lot of people are doing that. Yeah. And I get a lot of ideas if I go online and just search for a specific topic, what people are doing. And not necessarily that I'm going to do exactly. Sometimes it is a perfect idea that I found. Sometimes it's just inspiration. From that, you create a new idea, right? And that's how things evolve.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if there's any other like support to do this. I think you said something that is really interesting, because I learned that after I started to actually work with this, the level of creativity that we need to have to do this. And again, that's why I think I have fun with it, because it demands that. It's not just something that you put in some slides, the content. Like I mentioned, since I have that the problem as an inspiration, how can I do this more fun, more real? I need to be creative for that and do brainstormings in talking to people and to myself, let's say. So the level of creativity, it's what it makes it more fun than maybe. I'm thinking how it was in the past. I cannot answer for that because I was not teaching in the past, but probably there was always some level or a lot of level of creativity from professors as well in the past.
Yeah. I mean, what you said is, I think, absolutely true. There's a lot of people out there who are in the same situation and they're finding their way through it. And they are all dealing with things on different levels. Some are focusing on the sort of presentation skills angle, I guess you would say, voice and body, how you interact with your visuals, almost a confidence thing. Some are kind of focusing on maybe the next level of that, which is sort of analogy and visualization and rhetorical techniques to build empathy with the learners and kind of lift it off the page. But in the small classrooms, that's where, when it's not the kind of lecture format, which can be a little more rigid, when it's just you and your learners and you close that door, it's quite a cool moment, especially when you've got that little flutter of nervousness that you're going to try something a bit weird or a bit out there, and you're basing it on trust and saying, are they going to roll with this? And it's a great thing. What kind of things can you, what comes to mind about stuff that you've tried that you walked out and you just thought, wow, it changed the energy in the room, and people really engaged with the learning opportunity? And what other things can you remember that maybe seemed like a good idea at the time but really didn't work?
Well, let me see. Well, the first thing that I learned is every time I'm trying something new, I actually tell them that is the first time I'm trying this, because I think there is a level of engagement from them to make it work that is important. No, not just from my side. I think if they know, guys, this is something new, let's see how it goes. Like, let's make the best out of it. And I ask help from them as well, because if at the middle we see that it's not working, together we can try to make it work in a way. So I like to always be clear with them about that, and always at the end get feedback. I always want to get feedback. What did you think? Was it good? Did you learn something? Would you suggest for me to keep doing this and applying to other people? Because a lot of times they're not open to feedback. I'm going to answer your question, okay? So I'm just getting a little detour, but I'm going to answer your question. I just feel a lot of times they have problems with providing feedback. With maybe insecurities. I've heard in the past that they are afraid that, the grade will be impacted if they say bad things or something like this. And so I try different ways of making sure they are open to share, because I think it's the most important thing, right? But some of the things that it worked and it didn't work, let's say. Last semester, when you asked me, the first thing that came to my mind was last semester. I teach sustainability, sustainable business, and we talk about sustainable development goals. And it's a lot of content if you think about it. It's 17 sustainable development goals. How can you talk about each one of them in different ways that business can impact and all of that? So one of the things I like is it's a common strategy that they actually present, right? So they are responsible to bring the content, but it does not work that well all the time. Let's say, I think you know what I'm talking about, that when someone is presenting, not everyone's paying attention, right? So I did my part, I presented. So now it's the other.
Switch
right?
off, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was seeing that they were not really learning everything, all the sustainable development goals. So last semester, I did a game after the presentation. So they presented. In the next class, it was a game based on the presentation. And the game that I used is, you know, the TV show Jeopardy? Do you know which one? That's questions and answers, right?
Yeah.
So I did a kind of Jeopardy with them. So based on what they presented, I got questions. And I was surprised because they were so into it. It was, you know, that they had to pick, oh, I want to answer questions about, I don't remember now exactly actually the themes that I used, for 500 points, right? For 200 points. So it was really a game. And it was worth something at the end. They will get some points because it's something important as well. It's not just for them to win. They need to, I think, it needs to have other values, right? So they would get a little bit more in their final grade, first place, second place, those types of things. And they were so into it. Like you could see they wanted to win, but they were also learning. They were absorbing, you know, what we were seeing. And I got the feedback at the end. I'm going to do it again next semester for sure, because it seems it worked. I am sure there are a lot of things that I tried that did not work. It's not coming right now. Like
because you've suppressed the memory. You just want to forget it.
Because I didn't use it again. It's just like a one-time thing. But well, what was it? There was one thing that it worked kind of, I'm gonna say. It's a challenge that I'm sure a lot of people is facing right now. After COVID, we needed to migrate to online a lot. So for example, I teach lean management. And lean management, or lean as a whole, for me, it's something that it's taught with simulations and games. I learned lean like this, and most of the training you find, there are a lot of simulations and games on that. And so if you go online, you see many, many different examples. But most of the games you have available, they are restricted to be in the classroom, right? And then being online, you need to adapt to things, and it's not as easy. So I needed to adapt a game that I used to use. I used to have students do pizzas, like fake pizzas. It's a common lean game. So you can do a simulation of workstations and how everyone is doing their job and all of that, how to make it more efficient and all of that. And like, how I'm going to do this online. It was right in the beginning of the pandemic, and everyone was fully online. Like, how I'm going to do this? So I did create an alternative using Google Slides. You use just slides, and each slide, it's a workstation. So you're still doing pizzas in a way, and going from one slide to the other, like an assembly line, those types of things. It was not as bad. It was okay. It worked in a way, But then this semester we were hybrid. We're not just fully online. And that was a mess. Not sure if I'm going to use that again. To be able to, it took me almost more than one class just to organize. That's not efficient.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the most difficult thing, isn't it? Is just the visualization of all the, like, mapping it out, how the interactions happen and the technology to support it.
Yes.
Because the idea is really good, but then, it's like, okay, sometimes you get to a point where you realize, oh, this isn't going to work because the instruction I gave.
Exactly.
But it's amazing, I think, how, as educators, we it's like a muscle, it sort of develops the instinctive ability to change quickly or to rescue a situation. And honestly, take it from somebody that I've been in and out of the classroom, and I've been kind of out of it for a little bit now. And I find when I go back in that instinct has disappeared a little bit, to be able to think very quickly and rescue the activity, or, but it's something that takes a while to build, I think, and especially when the shift to hybrid, there's all these new things to know. And it's been challenging. I wonder.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that was a good example where I asked help from them as well. Guys, let's make this work, right? Let's try to make this work. And at the end, we got something out of it. It took more time maybe to organize. I asked like patience and help from them. It's also a learning experience from them to make something work, because it's a reality in life. I actually remember a real story, an experience that I went through in an organization that I was working. My boss and I, we planned this whole week of a lot of activities for the team. And then we were in the middle of one activity that was not working. It was just, it was just not working. And you could see the reaction of everyone. Some of them wanted to make it work, so they were with us, and some others like closed and like, oh, this is not working, I don't like this. And it's much better when you have people with you, that attitude is important. And I really, really believe that when we are teaching anything, if I'm teaching lean or sustainability, it's not only that content, but the whole attitude of students and how to overcome whatever happens. It's important. It's where they should be practicing this to be ready for the reality of business world, for sure. Yeah,
it's almost like you mentioned earlier on, it's kind of almost a learning culture. And this is what I think, again, it's great to hear you talk about this, because sometimes, maybe an educator is tempted to focus too much on the content, and it's just about the content, what and the externalities of, passing the test or the exam or whatever. But we're missing huge opportunities to develop things that really matter. I mean, you talked about how you came out of a purely academic environment and didn't feel prepared for the reality of the world. And it seems like you're mindful of that in the classroom, because you're talking about, well, if feedback makes the whole thing work, then we need to work on how to be okay with feedback. And that means we need to work on our relationship, and we need to work on expressing vulnerability and saying, let's make this work together because it's in our best interests. And I don't have all the right answers all the time, and just being open with that. Whereas I think it's difficult for a lot of educators to do, is to let go is the hardest thing, and spent years building up this authoritative persona, especially when you've come from, sometimes other roles, and then come into this to actually take the humility of saying, I don't know everything, and let's co-create the learning experience. And also about how we learn. I mean, you're talking about opportunities to actually stop and say, well, okay, this isn't working. Why is it not working? How can we make it work? And that reflective process is gold, because learners are building an awareness of, it's metacognitive, how do I learn best, and what works for me, and these are strategies that they can then take forward into real life. So it's great to hear you're focusing on what's sometimes called the hidden curriculum, or you know, what's underneath the learning and what is the learning process as well. Um, how have your beliefs about education evolved from your time as a learner? Well, I guess we're all still learners, but as a student, let's say, in the more formal environment, to where you are now. Have your beliefs in it about what education is and what the purpose of education is, has that evolved in some way, and where has it led you to?
I think, well, it changed a lot for sure. I think it started to change actually when I was still not working with education, but as I was, I don't know, hiring people or working with people that were just arriving, just graduating and starting their career, and seeing how they arrived, the things that they were good at, the things that they needed more development, let's say. It got me thinking a lot of what is the role of, you know, education as a whole, what schools should be teaching or not. So for example, another thing that I've been teaching, it's things focused or related to personal development, kind of soft skills, but you know, emotional intelligence and conflict management and all of that. And it's something that I thought a lot of, is this really the role of, I'm teaching a business school, so let's focus on this, but is it the role of business schools to actually teach this, or just teach, you know, business? But I cannot separate those two. So
no,
you can't. I mean, it's human relations, right? Between that's what business is a lot. And it got me thinking, I do see more openness for that. This is something that I see more in education, of developing the person. I see more doors open towards that. Not everyone maybe is doing this, but you see even in research or reports saying how corporations are actually looking for people who have those soft skills, right? Problem solving, resilience, emotional intelligence. Usually they're like in the top of the skills that people are looking for. And this is, I think it's one of the main shifts that I'm seeing. And it's just, I mean, I'm talking here, but I talk to other faculty, my colleagues, and I see how the interest it's growing for that. I see a lot of similarities in mindsets from what I'm sharing here, these perspectives, and my colleagues, that they teach different things. They teach, I don't know, operations, project management, right? So many things that it's not just the content, but like we're just talking, everything that is in the background, maybe supporting the content, right? You need to provide the base that will allow them, the students, to know how to apply that. And it's not only the technical knowledge, but I don't know if I'm making sense, but I know that the
absolutely
support that will making them actually be able to do things. This is one of the things I see a lot of changes in how education is. Again, it didn't change completely. I'm just seeing more of that, let's say. And of course, everything we just talked about it, the not just lecture and everyone focusing in bringing more reality into the classroom. I was surprised of how much that it's happening as well nowadays.
It's good to hear. And I think that, you know, our learners will thank us, you know, or be grateful for having gone through that, because you and I too have had the experience of coming out of university education and being totally underprepared for the realities of life, because that was not the focus. And I wonder, I mean, there is a way of looking at it that we're talking about roles. Is it the role of the educator? Is it the role of the university? But what we could say for sure is that there's so many opportunities to do this, and why not? You know, so if you're teaching project management and or you know, Kaizen and lean management or something like that, and there's a point where it's like, well, why don't we learn this through a discussion format, for example, where there is a chair for example, and then we're learning the content, but they're also developing that critical skill of listening and turn taking, you know, and hedging and respecting opinions and unpacking what someone says and empathy and all that kind of stuff. Why not? Because the learning is still happening, and you might as well take the opportunity to focus on underlying critical skills as well. So, but I see, yeah, I know what you mean. Not everybody is doing that. You seem to be in a culture. I mean, I taught in the same institution as you when it was very new, when it was still up in the little building in the Zona Alta. Very small faculty then. It's much bigger now. It seems like you've got a bit of a community around you that you're seeing from your colleagues, that there is that kind of willingness to, and from the institution, encouraging you as well to bring reality into the classroom and things like that. I wonder, just to kind of round off, I mean, what would you like to sort of focus on next, you know, in your own journey to becoming the educator that you want to be? You know, what does that look like? What is the ideal scenario when you think about the vision of, like, okay, Claudia as the self-actualized, fulfilled educator who's able to achieve what you really want to achieve with the learning? What does that journey look like?
That's a very good question, because I didn't think about it. That's a big question. I should know something like this. Yes. What I'm going to share maybe some of the reflections that I'm currently doing, because I think it inspires what I'm pursuing to be as a teacher, right? So I know we're talking so much about how things are changing, and it should change how we should bring more the reality to the students, role playing, case studies, games, so they can have fun and learn all of that. And I try to use this. I don't want people also to have like the wrong impression of me. I don't only use that. My classes are not only that. It's a process. I use it sometimes. I use it when I think it makes sense, because I do think that there is also a risk if we just shift to have pretty much everything like that. Why? Because let's say the life, it's not fun every time, right? I mean, there are a lot of boring situations or tough situations that we all need to go through. And so I do think they also need to be prepared for that. So I don't think it's that bad to have just lectures sometimes. I think they need to be able to go through a lecture and take the most out of the lecture as well. I heard one time someone saying, actually a friend of mine said something that I never thought before, but because I always heard that the best professor is the one that can adapt to what the students need. And I take that with me. So what do the students need? I need to adapt my methodology for that. But he mentioned that the best student is the one who can learn from any professor, right? And I do think it's true as well. I mean, and then when I put myself, the shoes of a professor, I'm going to try to be the best I can and adapt to what is needed from the students. But I'm also a student. And so when I'm in the role of student, I need to make the best that I can learn with any methodology and type of professor. I know it's hard. I mean, we all have our preferred ways, natural ways of learning, but it doesn't mean you're going to give up of learning when you don't encounter that specific methodology that is the best for you. And so I do think that it's important sometimes to also expose the students to traditional ways that it can work as well. And it's important that they know how to handle that and how to learn from that as well. And that's what I'm reflecting nowadays, of how I can have a mix of both, which I think it's maybe my objective now, right? For example, we know that today, one of the things we are seeing a lot is people having more and more difficulties keeping focus and concentrating, because we have so many distractions and, you know, easy rewards with phone all the time, and a lot of stimulus, right, around us. So it's hard for us to keep focused and concentrated. And I think that new generation, maybe we have more problems because of that, because from the beginning, they're already exposed to all of that. And I do think it's my role as well to make sure they don't get that lost on that, you know, and I do think it's good to expose them to things that they will need to put effort to pay attention. It's not going to be fun all the time and entertaining all the time. They need to, from them, put efforts in, okay, I want to learn this. I need to learn this, and I'm going to put effort on this. So that's what I think at the end, my inspiration of what I want to be is based on them, right? It's not, again, I think it's not about me, it's about them at the end. I mean, I'm having fun with it. It's my job, and I like it, but it's my genuine intention of how can they learn more, and how can they be prepared for what's going to come in their lives, not professional lives only, but in their lives as a whole.
See, this is what I love about talking to you, Claudia, and hearing your experiences, is that you know, I come from the side of education. You know, I came through the, you know, lots of years as a teacher, teaching different things, and then studying education and blah blah blah. So when you're talking about what you've arrived at intuitively through your own values, you know, around education and what education should be, and your own desire to improve upon the aspects of your own education that you might not have liked, and to actually really take the responsibility seriously of doing the best you can to help prepare learners for an uncertain future. You've arrived at this all intuitively, whereas, you know, studying the formal way through education, it's come to the same conclusion. And that's a really interesting thing to hear, you know, that through just dealing with the learners in front of you and how they react and interact and engage and what sparks them, and the feeling of the energy in the room that you get when it's going well, and just feeling your way through that, you've certainly arrived at I think where education really is. You're talking about putting yourself to the side. It's about them. What do they need? What do they want? How do I meet that need and support them and guide them? Is really where education seems to be going. And I wanted just to ask you one final question, because you know, I sense from you a real passion for what you're doing, and I'd like to ask you, just as the final question, what is the best thing about your job? What is it that is making you smile? What is it that's making you want to continue each and every day? Because I know it's not always easy.
I don't. That's the interesting. It's supposed to be maybe a easy question to answer. I think it's a combination of so many things. Pretty much all the steps speaks to me, like from preparing the courses. I mean, I love the process of thinking about next semester, what I'm going to teach next semester, how it's going to be. And like I mentioned, I've been always kind of a nerd, and I like to study and you know, research things. And so I like that process. It motivates me for some reason that I can't explain. So this is number one. I don't know why. It's just part of me. I like that. So I like this whole process. In the interaction with the students, these things that we're just talking, this kind of trial and error mode, which is actually was never something, my preferred way of solving problems. I'm usually more into, let me think about it, and then you find solutions. But you need a lot of trial and error, and the creativity. It's something that for some reason in this context, it motivates me as well. I don't know if it's like you mentioning, you have the feedback like so in front of you, and it's different maybe from other jobs that I had in the past. This one, you see the results kind of right away, right? You have immediate feedback if it's working or not, or having students coming to you and saying, I like your classes, that was fun, I really like that, I learned a lot. You have much more direct feedback. So I think that helps as well. Or when you see a student saying, wow, you helped me change this point of view, I feel better now than I used to be, you know, those types of things. I think the human aspect, I think as an engineer, maybe I lacked that in the past.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, I loved everything that I study. Engineer was great.
And it gave you the love of problem solving too. I mean,
yes. Yeah. And then now you added the human aspect to it. Yeah. So you have both. And I think that it's very interesting, and it has some sort of purpose. And I don't know, a lot of people are talking about purpose today and finding the why, right? And this job gives me more of the why. It gives me that feeling of, you know, it makes sense what I'm doing. I'm doing something and I can see some changes happening.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. 100% understand you. That's exactly how I feel about it as well. And it gives you the reason to get out of bed in the morning and to get excited about what you're doing. And it's your why, but it's also knowing that you are maybe playing some part in helping someone else find their why. It's amazing.
You know what we heard so many times? How do you know what is your mission or whatever you want to call it? And people say, what makes you forget to eat? You know, it makes you forget about everything else. This is kind of what it is for me. When depending on what I'm doing, I forget about everything. Just put me in the flow type of thing. And so I do think it's kind of personal as well, the reasons why I like it.
Well, Claudia, you're in the right place and I'm glad you're there. And thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today and just sharing the experience with, you know, a lot of people in similar situations, you know, that have found themselves in front of a class and have had to teach yourself through trial and error and passion and resilience and, you know, embracing uncertainty and all of these great things to in service of others, essentially, which is, you know, a very noble thing, you know, and I'm glad that you were able to share that with everyone today. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Mark. It was a great conversation, really easy to talk to, and I'm glad you guys invited me for this. It was really pleasant, the conversation. And like I mentioned, it's an inspiration for me. And I know I don't get it right a lot of times. And I wouldn't say I'm a huge reference in all of my classes, but the learning process is amazing. Like the try out things, see how it goes. I think don't be afraid of trying out and get it wrong. Don't be afraid of feeling bad after, because when it doesn't work, you're gonna feel bad. I mean, I feel bad when it doesn't work, right?
Terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah. But that it's good, that it's part of the process, because you feel terrible, then you think, okay, how can I do this better? Right? It's like what moves you to improve, let's say. So I think it's important to sometimes put yourself out there and get it wrong, let's say, and be okay with feeling bad.